Take your listening guide and open your Bible to Psalm 34. Psalm 34. Psalm 34. Praise from a cave. We'll see what that context looks like in a minute. All right, let me give you a question. Get started. Where are you? Or let me just read it. When you're caught between two unwelcome, uncomfortable, maybe it looks like a no-win options. When you are there, where are you? Between a what? All right, that's exactly where you are. How many of you have been there? Well, let me rephrase that. How many of you are there? Okay, several of you. We tend at times to live there. It's almost a no-win solution. Maybe it's something going on in the family, and if you make this decision, it's going to tick that person off. You make this decision, it's going to tick that person off. Or maybe it's your work, and you make this decision, it's going to make that person mad. You make this decision, it's going to make that person mad. It's just kind of, are the lights going on and off? Okay, I just want to make sure I feel okay. Feel like I'm between a rock and a hard place. Whatever. See if we can get those Fatty back on. I think for this spiritual class to be due to darkness here. Well, anyway, David, who's written a number of the Psalms we've looked at already, David is between a rock and a hard place. As are his men. If you've got your Bible with you, turn back to 1 Samuel chapter 21. 1 Samuel chapter 21. And hold your place there. Some of you have in your Psalm 34, at the beginning of the Psalm, you have what's called a superscription. Not all translations include these. These are someone's best guess of what the context or the background or the backstory is of a particular psalm. The backstory on this one in terms of superscription says, of David wrote it. But why? What was the context? When he changed his behavior, let there be light, before Abimelech. Abimelech is a Philistine dynasty name, like Pharaoh was a dynasty name for the kings of Egypt. So before Abimelech, we'll see in a minute that they call him Achish. But Achish was kind of his personal proper name. So that he, that being Abimelech or Achish, drove David out and he went away. So what's going on? Well, back in 1 Samuel chapter 21, we're a few chapters after David showed up as the youngest of Jesse and took on the giant Goliath. Who remembers where Goliath was from? Gath. That'll be important in a minute. Gath. And he was the champion of the champions, as it were. And the Gath in the Philistine area. That'll be important in a moment. But from the time that David defeated Goliath, Psycho Saul, was after. The women were singing, Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000. So, anytime you got the women singing in your behalf, it's probably going to make some other guy jealous because they're not singing in his behalf. So Saul is hunting David down like a fugitive, like a lion. Even though Saul's own son Jonathan tries to intervene, say, "Hey, Dad, you need to back off," and Jonathan almost loses his life as a result of it as well. So he's pursuing David. David finds his way in a conversation, because David don't run, doesn't have a lot of food, and doesn't have any weapons. So David finds himself meeting with a priest saying, "Hey, I don't have any weapons." And if I remember right, Goliath's sword somehow ended up with you. You still got that? So he said, yeah, I still got it. And he said, well, I need it. Well, I don't have any weapons. So that's the backdrop when we get to verse 10. And David rose and fled that day from Saul. And he went to Achish, here we go, that says again his personal proper name, the king of Gath. And the servants of Achish said to him, don't we remember this guy? Is not this David, the king of the land? He'd already been, as it were, anointed as king, just had not taken, as it were, rulership. Did they not sing to one another of him in dances? David has slain his thousands, and slaughtered his thousands, and David his 10,000s. And David took these words to heart. You got to remember, he is in enemy territory where he killed the favorite son. And David took words to heart and had much faith in God and knew that God would. That's not what it says, is it? He was much afraid. You know, we do things when we're afraid that we normally wouldn't do, especially to protect our backside. Not that any of us in this room have ever done that or would do that. Well, that's what David does. Notice what happened. He was much afraid. So, verse 13, he changed his behavior before them and feigned himself mad in their hands. So he acts insane and made marks on the doors of the gate and let his spittle run down his beard. Just frothing at the mouth. Crazy. This is great. Then said Achish to his servant, lo, you see the man is mad. Why then have you brought him to me? Do I like madmen? That you have brought this fellow to play the madman in my presence? Shall this fellow come into my house? In other words, I have enough crazy people in my kingdom. I don't need one who killed our favorite son. Okay? So David departed from there with nothing and escaped to the cave of Adullam. And when his brothers and all his father's house heard it, they went down there to him. And this is those following David. Listen, David's in a bad enough shape to be in a rock and hard place. But notice who joins him. And everyone who was in distress joins him. And everyone who is in debt joins him. And everyone, this may be the worst of all, who is discontented joins him. Gathered to him, and he became captain over them. I'm not going rah rah, I love my men. They're distressed, they're discontented, and they're broke. And there were about 400 men. Now go back to Psalm 34. There were about 400 men. So that's the context. God delivers him, and I think in spite of his disobedience, God steps in and delivers him and provides for him, as we'll see. And he shows up in the cave, and out of tremendous thanksgiving, adoration, and praise for the God who had delivered him between the rock and the hard place, and his men between the rock and the hard place, he writes this song. The first part of it, I think verses 1 to 10 as I call, verses 1 to 10 are all about David, the sweet singer of Israel, writing a song of adoration and praise and thanksgiving to God. For God had delivered him, perhaps even in spite of his lack of trust and his own disobedience. And then the last part of the psalm, 11 through the end of verse 22, is a sermon. Okay, I can do the sermon part, I just can't do the song part. And it's a sermon on, let me tell you what I have learned living life at times between a rock and a hard place. Because men, 400 of them, hiding in a cave, and another 200 of them would join them, who were probably also discontented, financially broke and distressed. Paul writes this song and this sermon to help them to understand what God has done for me in spite of my own creation of troubles. God can do for you if you let Him. That's what the whole psalm is about. So let me read the psalm. I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. My soul makes its boast in the Lord. Let the humble hear and be glad. You may have let the afflicted hear and be glad. Oh, magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt His name together. I sought the Lord, and He answered me and delivered me from all my fears. Those who look to Him are radiant, and their faces shall never be ashamed. This poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of all his troubles. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear Him and delivers them. Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who takes refuge in Him. Oh, fear the Lord, you His saints, for those who fear Him have no lack. The young lions suffer want and hunger, but those who seek the Lord lack no good thing. That's the song. That's the hymn of praise, as it were, that I'm presuming that he wrote and sings to his men as a way of reminder. And now he moves into the sermon, the instruction. Come, O children, listen to me. I will teach you the fear of the Lord. What man is there who desires and loves many days that he may see good? Keep your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking deceit. Turn away from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it. The eyes of the Lord are toward the righteous, and His ears toward their cry. The face of the Lord is against them who do evil, to cut off the memory of them from the earth. When the righteous cry for help, the Lord hears and delivers them out of all their troubles. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers them out of them all. He keeps all His bones, not one of them is broken. Affliction will slay the wicked, and those who hate the righteous will be condemned. The Lord redeems the life of His servants. None of those who take refuge in Him will be condemned. Great song. Great song. A little lengthy, so let's take it apart. First, as the singer of the sweet song, again, this is out of his own personal experience, which I think gives tremendous gravity, as it were, to the situation. First, I want you to notice what David resolved, what he made his mind up to do. I will. It was a choice. It was a decision. It wasn't perhaps how he felt. It probably wasn't what he really wanted to do based on his emotions. But it's what he willed to do when he was between the rock and a hard place. And notice he says, I will bless the Lord at, a better translation is in. In. Big difference. In. I mean, He blesses us. We know that. In fact, question at the end, I'll ask you, what are some recent blessings that God has bestowed on your life? But how often do we bless Him? Now, this is interesting. Remember the first Psalm, blessed is the man? Okay? Remember last week, Psalm 32, blessed is the person whose sins are forgiven? That's a different blessing. That blessed means at peace. Okay? Fulfilled, satisfied, sense of completion. That is not the blessed here. It is the blessed down in verse 8. It is the same blessed. But this is a very different word which has a totally different meaning. The word blessed here literally means, again, think about where David is, think about where his men is, think about his situation between a rock and a hard place. And he begins with, I will bless. Here the word bless means, you'll understand that in context, is to bend or to bow the knee. To bend or to bow the knee. That is a resolve. In fact, he says in the next part of the word, His praise shall continually be in my mouth. One of the last things that most of us want to do in our journey with the Lord is consistently bow the knee. But when we get between a rock and a hard place, that's definitely one of the last things that we want to do, because we want to know, as one of His followers and one of His children, where's God? I'm one of yours. I'm one of the good guys. I'm one of the good girls. How come I'm having to go through this? How come this is my lot in life? I was just trying to obey you. I think one of my, I call it a missing beatitude. You know the Beatitudes in Matthew 5, verses 3 to 12 right in there. I think there are 8 of them. I think there are 2 others. I don't know if they got misplaced, but they're Beatitudes. And one of them is in Acts 20:34. It's more blessed to give than it is to receive. But there's one that Jesus speaks in Matthew 11, just a few chapters later, when He's talking about John the Baptist. And John the Baptist is in prison, going to be beheaded. And John is wondering, have I wasted my life in representing you? Are you the real Messiah? Are you the real deal? Anybody remember Jesus' answer? He said, listen, you take this message to John. Blessed is the man who takes no offense at me. Translated, I will bless the man or a woman who will let me run their life the way I see it to be run. May not necessarily agree with the way we want it to be done. And probably won't. I will bless the child of mine who will trust me even when they find themselves in difficult circumstances between a rock and a hard place. I will bless them if they'll let me run the life. Realize, I don't understand this. This doesn't make any sense to me. I may be distressed. I may be broke. I may be provisionless. But I will bow the knee and trust Him. I will bow the knee and trust Him continually. Look at verse 2. Look at verse 2. My soul makes its boast in the Lord. I want to boast in Him. Let the humble. I prefer the afflicted. The afflicted hear and be glad. I think this verse 2 really gives us the purpose. David, why did you write this song and give this sermon? Because I want the people that are in the cave with me, and the people that are going to end up reading this later that he had no clue in, I want them to understand. I've been between a rock and a hard place. I've got 400 men, 200 men that are going to be added. They're between a rock and a hard place. Welcome to life as my child. Welcome to life as my child. And I want you to know there's purpose in life even when it makes no sense. I don't make any mistakes, so don't take any offense at me. No offense at all. And notice in verses 1 and 2, this is to be done continually, not just when we feel like it, not just when things are going our way. And I find it interesting in verse 3 that there is not just the individual, as it were, adoration and praise and resolve to bless God, to bend the knee, but there's a corporate aspect of this. If you look in verse 3, oh, magnify, praise, as it were, bend the knee with me. Let us exalt His name together. There was a corporateness. I get the sense in the cave that he was saying to everybody, this is not just something that I need to do, it's something that we all need to do together. And I think that's a part of what happens. I just think we have great worship here. Whether you're a Saturday night or you come Sunday morning, one of the three. I just think we have great worship. Week after week, I wonder how they can do better than the week before. I mean, it's an amazing thing here. It just is amazing. And one of the great things that I enjoy is standing in the corporate worship. We're usually on the B-side round. I sit there because I like to be first taller, elevated, okay? Because I love watching the people below me and down on the main floor, worshiping God and bending the knee. Doing that together. It says to me, I'm not in this thing alone. And even when I'm facing difficult circumstances between a rock and a hard place, I'm not the only one. And there's probably a room full of those kind of people. And we're bending the knee together. I find great encouragement in that. Notice what as David is praising and blessing God and remembering to humble himself before the Lord, in verses 4, 5, and 6, what David remembered about his experience in Gath before King Achish. Look at verse 4. I sought the Lord. You got to remember, I've asked myself, you may go a lot of places running from Saul, but Gath isn't one of them. I mean, you've got to have other options. Why run right into the enemy's lap? I don't know the answer to that. But I'm not sure it's where he should have run. And he came to that conclusion real quick. Okay, bad mistake. I am between the rock and the hard place. But notice what he said, verse 4. I sought the Lord, and he answered me, and he delivered me from all of my fears. Remember in the passage when he really came to the recognition, oh, what have I done? That he was, what was the emotion? Fear. He delivered me from all of my fears. Notice the pronoun change. Not I. Those. What God's done for me, he'll do for you. Men. Those who look to him are radiant. Their faces shall never be ashamed. This poor man cried. This is David. And the Lord heard him and saved him out of all of his troubles. That's his testimony to the men. Strong and powerful testimony. What did David learn? What did he learn about God's work in his life? It's one thing for us to go through difficult circumstances, which happens in life. All who desire to live a godly life will be persecuted. In the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. Here's the problem. Oftentimes we go through being between a rock and a hard place, and nothing changes. We're still the same person on the other side of it. We didn't learn anything. That may be the definition of stupidity. Why do you think God has you and I go through something like that? Because we didn't learn it earlier. What did David realize? I think two things, and I won't labor here because this is the same shepherd boy that wrote the 23rd Psalm that we studied a few weeks ago. So what does David really remind himself of? You know, the older I get in the Lord, the more I realize that in my journey at least, it's true for a lot of people who walk with the Lord a long time, it's not so much about me learning something that I never knew, though that's important, and I'm open to that. It's being reminded of things that I learned and tended to forget. That God protects and provides. Notice in verse 7. Underline the angel of the Lord. That's important because that phrase is only used a handful of times in the Old Testament. First time in an appearance before Abraham early on in Genesis 16. Every time it's used, it is used to refer, stay with me, to a pre-incarnate, that means prior to his actual incarnation, a pre-incarnate appearance, manifestation of Jesus. I mean, put yourself in David's sandals. I did your will, and now the king that you appointed has gone psycho and is trying to kill me. I probably didn't seek you as I should have sought you on where do I go from here. And I found myself in Gath, having killed the champion of Gath. And what did you do? You pointed your finger of God at me and you said, that's your fault, just weather the storm. No. That's not what he said. Well, you're in trouble now, buddy. See what happened? God sends a He didn't just send any. He didn't just send an angel. He sent the pre-incarnate manifestation of Christ. And he encounts. Encamp is what you do to fortify a city, in this case, a person. He builds a circle. Many of us have heard this, a wall or a circle of protection around him. Because frankly, atheists should have killed him for what he had done. But God delivered him. And then in verses 8 to 10, oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who takes refuge in him. Oh, fear the Lord, you his saints. For those who fear him, you lack no good thing. The young lions suffer want and hunger, but those who seek the Lord lack no good thing. What do you think when Achish had David dismissed from his presence and from Gath? Do you think he gave him lots of provisions? I doubt it. I mean, he had nothing. Nothing at all. And David says, listen, let me tell you what really tastes good. The goodness of God. Which may be the greatest provision of all. That even though, and he mentions the young lions, those were seen in that day as the best hunters, the most powerful. Even the young lions can't find food at times. Scarce. There's no prey available. Even though they go hungry, those of us who fear him will be provided for. Those who fear him and bend the knee before him, he will make provision for. It may not be the provision we think we ought to have or deserve. And it may not be in the time frame that we think he needs to do it. But when we think like that, we're only proving that we think that we're in charge and he isn't. And David had learned that God provides. When our fear, go to the next slide. Yeah. When our fear of him, I'm talking about awe, respect, bending the knee, exceeds all other fears. I'm not saying it's easy to get there. And I'm not saying once you get there, you can stay there. He delivers and provides. When our fear and awe, respect, and willingness to trust him exceeds everything else. So how do we fear him? I think it's here in the text, just kind of bleeding through a lot of places. We seek him. We call on him. We take refuge in him. We trust him. We rest in him. We do all those things that says, my life is in your hands. You're in control, even though it makes no sense to me. I'm going to trust you and I'm going to rest in you to provide. Okay. When we fear him, there's not much left to fear. So that's the song. I don't know if he's singing this over and over to his men, and I don't know if his men are having a weird out experience that their captain is writing a song and singing to them. I don't know. Okay? I do know that the text said in Samuel that they were distressed and they were broke and they were between a rock and a hard place. So David closes in 11 to 22, moving as it were from the singer to the preacher. And this is the teaching section. Trying to convince them, you need to learn from this experience. Don't waste the between the rock and the hard place time. Don't waste it. Don't get mad, don't get angry, don't get even. Let God speak. This is what David wants them to understand. Notice in verse 11, come. This is a plea. He's begging them, come. Listen to me. Listen to me out of my personal experience. And I will teach you how to fear the Lord. Y'all, is there anything more that you and I need to learn in that? And to live in that? Let me teach you out of my experience. And notice verse 12. What man is there who doesn't, notice, who doesn't, man or woman, desire life and loves many days, that's a long life, that it may see good, and a good life. If you do not want to enjoy a good and long life, raise your hand. Because you've lost your mind. This is what we all want. This is what we all want. And David's saying, let me tell you how to do that. Now, these are general principles. Nothing in here, in my view, for the most part, is a promise. A promise, when God gives a promise, it's an inviolable and it's going to happen. A principle is in Scripture that the Holy Spirit gives us that's more often than not true. It's generally true, but it's not always true. Like some of us as parents, how many times have we claimed pray my child wishes to go when he's old will not depart? Okay, and our kids, fell off the merry-go-round. And some still are. Okay. It is a generally true principle. It is. But it's not an inviolable principle. Why? Because we got free will. And this is what he says. There are 2 points to the sermon. I wish he had 3 in a point, but only 2. In verses 13 to 16, he says, listen to my teaching. Let me tell you what I've learned and let me pass it on to you. And he says, take heed, watch out, in 3 areas. And God, he hits it all. He hits it all. Watch what you say. Watch your words. How many times have you found ourselves between a rock and a hard place because of something that we said that we wish we hadn't said at the moment it flew out of our mouth? Watch what you say. Keep your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking deceit. Watch where you go. Watch where you go. Where did he go? The gap. It is impossible to be the wrong person in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong people and make the right decision. It's impossible. You may think you'll be the exception, but if you're in the wrong place, wrong time with the wrong people, it's not going to go well. It's not going to go well. And then watch, the idea in verses 15 and 16 is kind of watching what you do, who you are, what you say. It's kind of wrapping it all up together, because notice what he says. The eyes of the Lord are toward the righteous. He sees, his ears, he hears, and the face is against those who do evil. Are we going to say anything, go anywhere, be in the wrong place, think God's not going to know? Is God ever going to say to you and me, oh, I didn't see him doing that? I can't believe she just said that. Now, I think one of the greatest ways to honor someone, because I do a lot of Bible study, read a lot of Bible studies from other men and women, and listen to other sermons and stuff, and I think one of the greatest honors to someone else is to borrow pieces of those things. I want you to go with me over to 1 Peter 3. 1 Peter 3, verse 10. 1 Peter 3:10. Listen to these words. He that would love life and see good days Let him keep his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking deceit. Let him turn away from evil and do good. Let him seek peace and pursue it. For the eyes of the Lord are upon the righteous, and his ears are open to their cries. But the face of the Lord is against those who do evil. That sound familiar? And Peter borrowed David's sermon. He said, that's good stuff. It fits right here. And what the Lord wants me to say. Okay, go back to... So, listen to my teaching. Watch what you say. Watch where you go. Watch who you hang with. God is watching. And then in verses 17 and 20, learn from my example. Note, I am living proof that even when we make a decision that it's our fault and we end up between a rock and a hard place, God does not abandon us. God doesn't stick his bony finger out and say, you make that decision. You can just go on your own. He does not abandon us. David said, let me tell you, men, some of you are broke, some of you are distressed, some of you are discontented. Let me remind you of some basic principles when you're between a rock and a hard place. Verse 17, when the righteous cry for help, the Lord hears and delivers them out of all their troubles. He hears the righteous. It doesn't say the perfect. Righteous. We're righteous in Christ, at least positionally. Verse 18. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. Isn't that a great principle? He's there. Never leaving us or forsaking us. Verse 19. Few are the afflictions of the righteous. What is it? Okay. Don't we wish it read few and far between? And the more you try to follow me like me, the less it will be. But have you ever wondered, God, I've never tried harder to walk with you, and things never seem to be coming more apart than they are right now. Hard times are part of life, even for the most righteous. If you want a Sunday afternoon edification, read Job. Okay? And read about his three friends, of which you don't want. Okay? And he was the most righteous man on earth. Listen, there's a battle going on between the good side, the godly side of God, the Holy Spirit, and the evil side. Guess who's caught between the rock and the hard place? Us. Many are the afflictions. Many are the afflictions of the wicked. But verse 19 and 20, but the Lord delivers them out of them all. He keeps all his bones, not one of them will be broken. He'll see us through. He may not see us through the way when we want him to and the way we want him to. But he'll see us through. And then verse 21 is a promise of judgment. Affliction will slay the wicked, and those who hate the righteous will be condemned. I will bow the knee before the Lord at all times. Praising him, blessing him will be continually in the mouth. And then the last verse that most think was added later, kind of as a summary statement, verse 22. The Lord redeems the life of his servants. None of those. He's not saying just me. None of those. Those. Listen to me, men. None of those. You included. Okay. Of those who take refuge in him will be condemned. Let's say that verse together. Let's say it together. The Lord redeems the life of his servants. None of those who take refuge in him will be condemned. Where are you? You know, our family. In some places, we're between a rock and a hard place. You understand that? Okay. Because that's where many of you are. And I'm not sure between now and heaven that's exactly where God wants us to live. It's just how will we respond when He comes. For next week, I want you to read Psalm 37. That's a long one, 40 verses. I'm not going to unpack all of those, I don't have time, but I'm going to get the theme of it. Great. This is one of the great Psalms, Psalm 73, interestingly. This Psalm deals with the ongoing, eternal question of why do the evil and the sinful seem to prosper, and why do the good and the godly and the honest seem to suffer. Okay, we wrestle with that. And we will too next week. And then questions for today. And again, let's try to get out of here by 10 after. What are some specific blessings from God in your life today? Voice them out. Say, let the redeemed of the Lord say so.
Where?
Number 2, how consistent are you in blessing God in and at all times? Be honest. Be honest. And then 3, why are we more likely? I'm going to make you think through this very uncomfortable, put a rock in a hard place. Why are we more likely to bless God in the good times than in the bad? Why? Okay? Let's pray. Father, thank you for your servant David. So honest, so transparent, so real, so much like what life is really like, then and now. Bring me to the point that I can really bless you in all times. That I can bless you when I'm put a rock in a hard place that I created by either my own sinfulness, stupidity, I said what I should have said, I said it in a way I shouldn't have said it, or I did something that I shouldn't have done. And you saw it, you heard it all. But help us to come to the place that we can really let you run out of life and trust you, knowing that you're at work in us and you're trying to teach us something, even through some of the most difficult circumstances of life. Help us to be the kind of men and women who follow you like David and give praise from the King. In Jesus' name.